Okay, it's lovely to have Roz here. And just as we were saying, lovely Roz, obviously you've been involved with Unleashed for many years, and you're on our
Yeah.
action team, and Brian's a trustee, and you've directed for us and just done pretty much every job there is to be done. But I don't know whether people know that actually also you were a fully qualified counsellor in your
Yes.
previous life. So
Yeah.
that's why we're talking to you now, because we're talking about this whole thing of forgiveness and the place that has in perhaps finding peace within ourselves. So Roz, you've heard the conversation about, the play and what the play was about and the wonderful work that Corrie Ten Boom did. What is your, from a professional point of view as a counsellor, your take on the whole area of forgiveness and forgiving yourself?
Yeah, I think forgiveness is a really key area for everybody, not just lots of people, but for everybody. And I was thinking of it particularly in context at the moment with us all being locked down, because, if we're not with someone else, we're with ourselves. And of course, in that time of being with ourselves, there's lots of things that can go round in our minds, and sometimes they're not very helpful. And they take our moods up and down and round and round. And we may dwell on things that we've found hurtful, or just not happy in ourselves, and they might lead us to feel low or depressed. So forgiveness is part of the way out of that, actually. I know that lots of people say, oh, well, you should forgive, and forgiveness is something that doesn't always come easily. There's two parts to forgiveness, I think. There's forgiving the person, and there's forgiving yourself, because without forgiving and being kind to ourselves, we can't move forward either. So forgiveness is about recognizing the situation, seeing what's happened, not just revisiting it and just feeling angry, because you will feel angry if you feel that you've been done wrong to, but coming to a point where you can say, okay, I'm going to let this go. I'm not going to keep concentrating on this today at this minute. I'm not going to let it buzz around in my head like a blue bottle. I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to squash that blue bottle.
Yeah.
Actually say, I forgive that person. That may be the words. Now, there may be things that have affected you so badly that you may actually need to talk to someone else later about how that's impacted on your person.
Yeah, I mean, that is really helpful, Roz. And I think with a lot of people who struggle with addiction, very often the root of that is an adverse childhood experience where, as children, they've been perhaps abused in some way, or neglected, or had something awful happen to them. And I think, it's very easy to glibly say you've got to forgive them, but if something, very often people turn to drink and drugs because something really terrible has happened in their life. Trying to block it out, exactly. So if it is something really monumental, what would you as a professional counsellor say? I mean, obviously thinking of coming out of, lockdown and stuff like that, how do people get to a point where they can face the very thing that's perhaps, been the catalyst for their life unravelling?
Well, I would say, having and now retired as a counsellor, that really you do need some professional help with that. You can talk to friends, you can deal with some of it yourself, but really you need somebody to guide you in finding your way out. It's a bit like being stuck in a maze. You keep coming into the dead ends and ending up where you started, but you need someone else who can guide you out of that maze so you can become free of it. And it's not to diminish in any way the horror of what may have happened, but to acknowledge that and actually come to a place of peace with it, which may seem impossible at one point. But I've seen it happen. It is totally possible to do that, but you will need someone to help you with it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously one of the 12 steps in the 12-step program is actually making amends, perhaps very often for stuff that we ourselves have done where we've hurt others, or we've had an impact on other people's lives. But I think within the context of that also, there's the whole thing of, like you said, forgiving ourselves. And I think nowadays, not so much, but in the past, perhaps there was almost like a stigma about getting help from a therapist and it being very American. I mean, I myself, obviously, I've had counselling in my 30s. What would you say to someone who perhaps is struggling with something that they just can't resolve internally? and yet they've perhaps got a bit of a stigma about going and seeing someone who's a professional counsellor?
I think one of the things that brings up, Martin, is, oh, I couldn't tell someone else because they feel ashamed. They feel shame. And shame just means there's something wrong with me. Well, actually, there isn't anything wrong with you in one sense. What you need is to find your way out of that fog. You're lost in the fog and you need someone to help you out of it. Now, using the higher power, which is in 10 steps too, there are obviously those ways of asking for the higher power to help you, but actually asking another person who is experienced enough to take you by the hand and lead you through that difficult situation. And the other thing about forgiveness is that it's never a one-off. You're talking about Corrie ten Boom. Corrie ten Boom set up all those things about forgiveness after she left the prison concentration camp, and she said she'd forgiven. But the real test came when she was face to face with that man who had damaged and killed her sister. And so forgiveness isn't a one-off. Sometimes it's exercised for years. We have to just keep saying, no, I do forgive that. And it's also an act of will as well as a decision. It's a continual. It's like breathing. You have to keep breathing. You have to keep breathing to keep yourself healthy. There are things in us that we have to do to keep healthy. And one of the things we have to do too is not to allow that thought, that negative thought, to just buzz around like a blue bottle in our head. Get it out there. Let somebody splat it for you.
Yeah.
I want to lead you.
Well, Roz, that's really, really helpful. And I think it's perhaps dispelled a few, views about what counsellors can and can't do. And obviously, perhaps if there are people watching this and they feel actually that is really them, they've got some issue that goes right back to their past, they would want to talk to someone. Obviously, when we come out of lockdown, we can facilitate and help you find perhaps the right person that you need to speak to. So, Roz, thank you so much for joining us. And
listen, everybody, take care of yourselves.
Yeah, bless you. Well, it's lovely to have you on, and Roz, we'll see you probably in the next week or so, but thank you so much for joining us. All right, take care. God bless.